start with the roll call. Then we'll have the commissioner when he arrives.
Governor?
Here.
Attorney General?
Here.
We have a quorum. We'll get started, and I'd like to invite everyone to join Drew and I in pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First order of business is the consideration of the April 30th minute meetings, attachment 1.
Move acceptance. Is it acceptance? We accept them? Let's accept them.
Accept them? You can approve them. We can do it either one.
I accept them, and so I'd like them to be approved.
Okay. I'll second that. Are there any additions or corrections? Call for the vote.
Attorney General?
Yes.
Governor?
Yes. Next up is the consideration of the updated professional service contract for the Pipeline Authority, which is under attachment 2 in your binder.
So Governor and Attorney General, attachment 2 and attachment 3 are updated. If we take them together, they are updated contracts for our Pipeline Authority Executive Director and our Transmission Authority Executive Director. And the changes largely are just to incorporate some standard language that is incorporated into most state contracts. We did review these contracts with the Attorney General's office. Matt Sagsby was very helpful in helping us review, update, and modernize the contracts. And if you look at page 4 on the Pipeline Authority contract, you'll see that starting at section 11, and then going through section 25, those are all of the new sections that we've added to the contract. In conversations with both Justin and Claire, they are understanding of the need to get these updated, find it a very agreeable decision, and as soon as these are approved by the commission, we will execute new contracts with Justin and Claire and have those new contracts in place.
For the Attorney General, I could, Karen, share the last time these were updated, I think.
Oh, boy. Well, they were updated. We signed new contracts with Claire and Justin about a year ago, but the template that we were using was decades old. So
Hence missing a bunch of common.
right.
Yeah, I was going to say, it doesn't look out of the ordinary. I'm surprised. I'm surprised at these that they were.
You know, Karen and the team are just doing a good job of going back through and trying to clean up some of these things that were missing from the past. And we can take them both as one motion for both items B and 3. We can do the updated contract template for Pipeline Authority and for Transmission Authority as one motion.
Yes.
I would move that we approve the updated and standardized contracts as noted in the materials under tab 2 and 3. And replace the ones that are currently in effect.
I'll second that. Any discussion or comments? Call for the vote.
Attorney General?
Yes.
Governor?
Yes, motion carries.
Thanks for doing that.
Yeah, we appreciate you being on top of it. On item number D, similarly, contract template discussion.
Yes, Governor, Attorney General, similar to the other two contracts, we have been reviewing the contracts for our research and development programs. This would be approval of the template that we worked with the AG's office on for our research and development programs. This one in particular is catered to the late night research development and marketing program. The template is substantially similar to the previous contracts for Pipeline Transmission Authority. It's set up as a relationship between the commission and an independent contractor who provides consulting services to the commission. Whether that's an individual, whether that's an LLC, a 501c3, this is really set up for an independent contractor. It provides a scope of work that details the tasks necessary for carrying out successful implementation of the program. It includes a biannual term with opportunities for biannual review and it includes standard contract language that came from the Attorney General's office that is standard to all of our state contracts.
Thank you, Reese. I'll interject for Karen. Can we let the record show that Commissioner has joined the meeting?
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. We're on under section 2, item D. Reese just went through. We've just before we got here approved the new updated decades-old templates for Pipeline Authority and for Transmission Authority, and now we're doing the same, approving a template related to Industrial Commission research and development programs. Any questions for Reese? We'll call. Hearing none, I mean, I'd seek a motion to get this on the table.
So moved.
We have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
Second. Any additional comments or Reese, anything you maybe want to repeat? Or that was, you were saying just as Commissioner is coming in?
Sure. So this is a template that we could use for all of our research and development programs, but this template in particular you see in front of you is catered more toward the Lignite Research and Development Program. It does incorporate a lot of the standard contract language that we are updating across all of our contracts. And this one in particular is formed as a relationship between the commission and an independent contractor.
So the Attorney General had a chance to review this and make sure
Yes.
it's in order with everything else that we do. Okay.
Yeah, we discussed prior, there was, since these were decades old, there was entire sections, I think in the first ones from 12 on, like indemnification, confidentiality, compliance with public records, that were not included in the previous templates. So there is a standard language, but updating. Any other questions or comments? Now I'll call for the vote.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General,
Yes.
Governor?
Yes, motion carries. There are other Office of Industrial Commission business?
No other business.
North Dakota Mill and Elevator, Vance and Kathy, thanks for driving down. You both?
Sure.
Beautiful day to be driving across.
It is a nice day out there.
You take a different route and do some crop, 70-mile-an-hour crop analysis when you're driving here.
Coming down, we just stayed on the interstate the entire way, but I think going back, we'll probably take a look at a few fields, yeah.
Because it looks like we got, and we're having a good spring. I mean, is that your read too from talking to your,
Mhm. Yeah, I think we're 71% planted as of last Monday, so we're hoping it's between 80 and 90% now. Been a lot of rain out there, so we'll see how much progress they've made, but the fields that we've seen look really good. I think they're ahead of schedule, ahead of the 5-year average anyway, so looking like so far, it looks like a good crop.
Great.
Rain makes grain, so
Yep.
there's just no need too much.
Governor, Commission members, I would just point out that the report that Vance is going to go through is a separate attachment in the back of your binders.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'll start with our third quarter results. We had a solid third quarter with profits of $5,187,000, up 8% over the profit of $4,809,000 last year. Year to date, our profits total $15,027,000. That's versus profits of $11,315,000 through last year. That's up about 33% through the first 3 quarters. Shipments for the third quarter were 4,266,000 hundredweights compared to 3.8 million hundredweights last year. That's up about 10%. And year-to-date shipments are 12,988 versus 11,941, up about 9%. Increased third quarter profits mainly due to the higher shipment volumes and also basis gains. Our shipments consisted of about 91% spring wheat flour and 9% durum products. Bag and tote shipments increased nicely by about 25% for the quarter to 785,000 hundredweights. Year-to-date bag and tote shipments are up about 60% from last year. Family flour shipments more than doubled for the quarter to 142,000 hundredweights and are up just under 100% year-to-date. We continue to see really good demand for Dakota Made and our private label retail products on our side. Organic shipments increased 47% for the quarter and about flat year to date. Total wheat purchase was 9.5 million bushels for the quarter, and we're at 27.7 million bushels year to date.
On the family flour, I mean, when we have 100%, it's not just nice. I mean, is there a market trend that we're fitting in or filling some need there? I mean,
I think what we saw on the family flour side was a big increase during the COVID years. Then we saw somewhat of a decrease as a lot of households had large inventories in the house as that was down. And now I think we're seeing a carryover of more at-home baking with the family, continuing on post inventory adjustments. And I think we expect that to continue. We're seeing it more on the private label side than the Dakota Made side, but both have seen pretty strong demand.
You were down a little bit last month or last quarter, correct? And then
Family flour actually as a segment was up last quarter. I think it's been up strong all year long.
you made something down last quarter.
Totes were down a little bit and organic. Those two items were down.
Okay. Nice rebound.
Thanks. On to the business discussion and outlook. Third quarter sales were 123 million to 36. That's compared to 128 million 57 last year. Down slightly due to the lower average cost of wheat this year, which our prices are based on. Year-to-date sales were 381 million versus 406 million last year for the same reasons. Operating costs for the quarter were $2.98 per hundredweight. That's versus $3.21 per hundredweight last year, down about 7%. Quarterly operating costs are down mainly due to the higher production volumes. Year-to-date operating costs were $2.79. That's versus about $2.80 last year. Gross margins as a percent of gross sales for the quarter was 15.4% versus 14.5% last year. So up, and year-to-date gross margins are 14.3% versus 11.1% last year. So strong margins. On March 31st, our hedge ratio was at the desired 1.0 with the monthly values or close to 1. Going forward into the fourth quarter, we expect continued good results and demand from our customers to increase as we go through the summer months and into the fall as it normally does. April was actually our highest volume month for a month, which is nice to see for a 30-day month. Spring wheat planting, as we talked about, is slightly ahead of schedule. Our mid-storage and handling projects still progressing. They're all still tracking for a startup before the end of the year. And that's all I have for today on our financials. Happy to answer any further questions you have.
maybe give us a quick update on the capital projects.
Sure. Big one, the mid-storage and handling project. We're hoping to be substantially complete and ready for sort of tours by the end of October, and expect to have it actually up and running before the end of the year here. So we're getting close. They've had, in general, good weather for construction, and we're getting there. We have quite a few other smaller projects. We're doing some track in front of the office there, which is difficult wheat for us, but we'll work around it. We have some packing projects that are happening and really doing milling projects. I think we have 5 of those that we're completing this year. So a lot of good work being done on capital projects. So far, everything is pretty much on schedule and on budget for what we're working on this year.
And how about open positions?
Open positions, you probably have the exact numbers on that, Kathy.
Yeah, I think we're at about 157 of the 170 that we're allocated. Some of those positions we've chosen to wait until the need arises to bring them in. Like specifically 3 of them are allocated to the MIDS handling facility, so those won't be hired until the facility is running. And then we have 5 allotted for a 4th milling shift, which will incorporate as we get, full 7-day runtime and see the need for that to come in. So some of them are kind of in a holding pattern, but otherwise our positions are basically filled.
We're finding people. It's still tough. We're interviewing, every week to find production employees, but we're finding the people we need, and I think we found some good ones. We've got a pretty strong crew out there on the production side.
When we take a look at between now and when the new crop arrives, do you have a good window on in our origination area, the level of on-farm storage and how that's changed or increased over time, and how much crop is out there that might be 23, 22, or what's the, from the buyer side, I mean, how much visibility do we have? Because I see a lot of, over the last decade, I don't know what the net change of on-farm is, but it's a big number.
A lot of on-farm storage out there, a lot of increases in on-farm storage. I think it would be safe to say that there's just a lot of wheat out there in general. And Durham, it's tough to say how many crop years that would go back. Probably more on the Durham side than the spring wheat side. But for origination issues, especially with the crop we have coming this year, which looks to be good, I don't see any issues for that happening in the near future. Big crop coming. I think people are starting to think about where it's going to go when it happens, and trying to empty out a few of those bins to put the new stuff in.
And then industry-wide, are we seeing more consolidation, more construction, more?
Panhandle is making progress on their new mill out in Utah. I saw a couple of pictures of that a few days ago. That's due to be up and running by the end of the year also. I don't think we'll see much effect to our business from that mill. There was a new mill announced by a company down in Brownsville, Texas, that is, I think they're based in Turkey. They have an office in Miami, and there's not a lot of info out there yet on exactly what's going on there, but they're talking about a 5,000 hundredweight mill down there. But yeah, still a fair bit of construction going on out there. No new mills closed in the recent history, I think, since we talked about that last time.
Any other questions for Vance or Kathy? Congrats on another good quarter.
Thanks.
Next item, I think, is Kathy on a recommendation for a contract for consulting service under 3B. Kathy and Karen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Governor and Commission members, I'm going to be recommending to the Industrial Commission the approval of a mill request to hire an independent consultant to provide a performance review and deliver some recommendations to the mill related to some human resource, information technology, and governance areas of their operation. This stems to some extent from a complaint that the mill received a number of months ago that we've been working through, but also in just talking with mill management about this, it seems like a good time for the mill to be utilizing this type of service as they work through succession planning and prepare leadership for transition. So I'm going to turn it over to Kathy, and she's going to talk a little bit about the complaint that they received, and then I'll pick up with the recommendation after that.
Thank you.
As Karen mentioned, we received a complaint last August. It was brought to our attention. In response to that complaint, the mill conducted a comprehensive review of each item listed on the complaint. There were several members of the mill team that were listed on the complaint. 2/3 of those members are no longer employed at the mill through turnover, retirements, those types of things. After we completed the thorough review, we also did a complete review of our IT policies and procedures. The complaint was related to 5 main areas of concern. Some of them were HR related, which the individual who launched this complaint does not have, it did not have authority to see those records. And our response to that is we do not discuss personnel records with any individuals outside of those authorized to be part of the discussion. The next area of complaint was travel, and most of that was related to travel that corresponded with business and personal. The mill does have a travel and business entertainment policy that's strictly followed. We do not, we do allow our travel to be extended for personal reasons as long as the required PTO is taken and no personal expenses are reimbursed. So we do pay close attention to what we're reimbursing when an employee submits their expense report upon return. The other area was governance and policy. We do have many policies. Most of those policies are approved here by the Industrial Commission. So you guys are aware of the policies that we have in place. And we also, as a management team, work hard to thoroughly review those and ensure that they're being followed as necessary. Electronic communications was the fourth area that was of concern. We do communicate our electronic communications policy to our employees, and they're thoroughly explained and part of our employee handbook. So we can't necessarily control what is carried out on those devices, but we do have a strict policy in place as to how they should be used. And then the last one was employee conduct and behavior. So the North Dakota Mill, we do not discuss discipline of our employees if there was conduct that took place that needed to be disciplined. But we also have our mission statement and our values as a company, and we try really hard to thoroughly ingrain those in our employees and really push them to act within those values and our mission. So after the review, we were not able to substantiate any of the claims that were made, and I'll kind of give you a reason, a layout of why that was. The timeliness of this complaint. This individual has been retired from our organization for several years, and many of the complaints, we no longer had records to be able to investigate, state whether those items took place or not. The other thing is, like I had said before, many of our employees that were named are no longer part of our organization. So if there was disciplinary action that needed to take place, we're unable to carry that out.
So Kathy, for context, if the person making the complaint was a former employee that left several years ago, what was the earliest of the complaints? How far back did the complaints go?
It was, we went back as far as 24 years, even before Vance was with the mill. So so that's part of
So
it
if
as
it's
well.
a 24-year-old complaint by someone that left several years ago, that's why we wouldn't have records.
Correct.
Or the employees
Our
from
current,
those.
our current retention policy is 6 years plus current fiscal year. So the complaints were not within that time period. The other thing is we do have a duty to report. Our employees sign each year if they think there is fraud, that is unacceptable, unethical behavior, whatever it is something that they sign each year as they have a duty to report, so it can be investigated and actions can be handled as necessary.
That's so wise to have that on both ends of it, both that encourage people that, that's the culture we expect you to come forward. It's not like it's punitive, but also giving organizations and frankly, people accused of wrongdoing an opportunity for due process and respond with current information. So I'll stop there, but I'm glad that that's provisions there. Because it also enhances the culture to let people know it's okay to let us know about things that are upsetting and troubling to you, and you also have an obligation to do with the organization.
Well, based on a few things that were stated in here, there's belief that there's fraud and inappropriate content and conduct. I mean, I'm trying to figure out why this wasn't stated earlier for this issue. Why wait several years before you bring it up to our attention? And then at this point, I guess maybe a bigger question, and it's probably a question for the Attorney General. How did this person get a hold of HR documents? And to that
It's going
point,
there.
okay,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a crime.
I
in
think, well,
itself.
that's part of the recommendation on the IT side,
It is, yeah.
security
So,
side.
yeah, one of the last points I was going to make on the issues with this complaint is this individual had documentation that they were completely unauthorized to have. It was outside of the scope of their work and definitely a breach of conduct on their behalf. So
It's
that was
serious.
concerning as well.
I won't keep interjecting on these things, but those are protections for the truth, right? That I think some people might hear that and say, oh, are you being defensive or looking for ways to undermine these? And it's just the opposite, really. I mean, if everybody can grab, cherry pick items that they want to do, there's no context for what the assessments that are made. And then they wait enough years that there aren't the other information no longer exists. It doesn't serve the public's interest in all of this to get into the truth. Like, what is the objective truth? What is the full body of the information that's out there? So, I want to underscore that because it's about getting to objective truth, not pushing back against people that are making claims. And people make claims about a lot of things. I was on the phone this morning about an important matter with one law enforcement entity around the state. I wish I hadn't seen so much of this over the years, but it does happen. And we're all about the truth. And that's best when you have a contemporaneous complaint that's made, supported by the full body of the accessible information, not by somebody just grabbing something like, this doesn't look good for that person. That doesn't serve public's interest at all. So
In closing, after thoroughly reviewing this, the mill it has decided to do a complete review of our policies. We're going to thoroughly review the policies and make sure that we have the best of industry practice in place. But we would also request to use an independent consultant to help us get there, to kind of help us make sure that we do have the best IT-related policies, procedures, make sure our securities are what they need to be. Also, our HR-related policies, procedures, make sure we're storing those confidential documents the way we need to, make sure that we don't have any gaps, holes, any of those types of things. We would also maybe like to shore up some of our governance. As you know, you guys are very familiar with our Century Code and that we are allowed to operate as a private business. So sometimes the interpretation of policy is not there when you're only seeing a piece of it. So we want to make sure that that we're all on the same page, that we're able to communicate that to our employees. So there's no gray area there, that everybody fully understands where we're at and how we should be operating. So with that, I will turn it back to Karen.
Just real quick, it's a good time for us to do a review of this type. We've had a lot of transition and we have 6 relatively new department heads covering the place. We have great cybersecurity, but as part of this, we'd want a review of cybersecurity as well. We know that's a big issue. So we think it's a good time for this.
Well, I think it's the right thing to do. I'll make the motion and I have a question. So moved.
second,
Question, Doug?
So this person has HR documents, I'm assuming, still has them. They could be
Yes.
personally liable. How is that going to be dealt with? Does that need the Attorney General to contact them or law
Okay.
enforcement? Or, I mean, this is, if anybody else sees those, that's serious.
Yes, I think Karen has responded to that concern directly to the complainant
Okay,
and made them aware that is an issue.
okay,
Yes, Commissioner, I did work with Matt Saxby and Erica Welsh in the Attorney General's office, and we did frame correspondence related to those concerns. So that has been communicated.
okay. I'm satisfied.
And then, and as far as the best practices, I mean, the scope, I mean, this is a good timing for it. But I also think, Kathy, what you're relating to about operating as a private business in the context, I mean, we've had things that have gone on now with the, where rules are evolving on the state side where, what we had this, if it's more than a cup of coffee and a donut,
Mm.
you know, it's reportable, but as a private business, you guys are hosting customers and I mean, whatever, and there's things that you have to do to compete against other private Fortune 500 companies that wouldn't be in the context of just the same rules that might apply to another agency. So I hope that the scope of this tries to zero in on that, because maybe there's some clarity that would come out of this recommendation relative to, you know, administrative code changes or legislation that would say, look, if we're going to be serious about this running as a separate business, then they better have a set of rules that match best practices from the value-added ag businesses as opposed to best practice for an agency. Because I mean, there are some things like, you know, who's your customer list, right?
Right.
And every other agency would, if we're dealing with someone, they got to say, well, here's who we're dealing with. But we'd be crazy to publish our customer list for all of our competitors to see
Right.
all the time. So there's things like that that maybe we should just get nailed down, that this is got some different things.
Yeah, and I think there's just a difference in interpretation by maybe what I would say is acceptable for a private business to do versus an employee who has only ever worked at the North Dakota Mill for 40 years of their career. They've never been in private business. They don't understand it. So it just is, there's just a difference of interpretation as well.
Okay, all right, so I got a motion and a second. We'll call for the vote.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General?
Yes.
Governor?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, Kathy and Vance. Karen,
Thank you.
that concludes the business for today.
Yes.
That's all right. We have. Thanks for driving down and good luck on the crop review on the way back. Right, if you go through Arthur, let me know how things are looking.
We'll definitely go through Arthur now.
Well, it's a popular short.
Yeah, it is.
Bismarck and,
I think there's water standing there.
yeah.
Easy to get out of here, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hi, Deanne.
Good afternoon.
Always happy to
Sorry.
see that season there on the,
It's
when is Jamestown going to figure out that it's a bison, not a buffalo? That's,
It says Buffalo.
Yeah.
Yeah, the billboard says Buffalo.
yeah, there's water.
Tourism guide says Buffalo.
There's water buffalo in India, there's Cape buffalo in Africa, but there's no buffalo in North America. Genus, species, bison. Look it up. Serious.
It's like the
No,
most
you're-
contentious moment since I joined the commission.
I'm your break from reality. My background.
Okay, well, we've got some consideration for state revolving loan fund applications.
Yes, today we've got Minot requesting $3,704,000 for some PVC pipes to replace the cast iron that's in two different areas of their town to reduce the breaks that they've been experiencing and improve the water quality in those areas. They've requested a 20-year loan term. They've indicated that they can make these payments and meet our coverage requirements. And based on that information, the advisory committee recommended approval of this loan.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Deanne, you mentioned iron, and I know we've got this lead pipe program that we're gonna, does Jamestown have any lead pipe or only iron?
This is Minot that we're talking about here.
Sorry. No, I'm sorry. Yes, okay, I got distracted by the background, but does Minot have any lead pipe issues? or-
I'm aware that they do have some issues. They have not applied for the lead funding yet. I believe they are probably still working on their inventory, which is the case with a lot of the cities in the state because those inventories aren't due until October. They will take their time until October and work on those inventories. And I anticipate we'll see a lot of applications once those inventories are completed.
Great. Okay, well, we've got a motion, a second. We'll call for the vote.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General,
Yes.
Governor.
Yes, motion carries.
And then the only other business we had was we had 3 loans that were below the $2 million threshold. We had a loan to the city of Drake under our clean water program, and then a loan to the city of Medina and one to Northeast Regional Water District. And if you'd like any information on those 3 loans, I'm prepared to discuss those if you'd like to further discuss any of those that were approved by the advisory committee.
Any questions on Drake, Medina, and Northeast? Remind us on Northeast, the communities that are involved. The Cavalier and Pembina.
This particular project is just working on their water treatment plants, so it'll serve that Northeast Water District. Is you hit the 2 counties that water district covers up there.
Yeah,
Walsh,
Cavalier, Pembina, Walhalla, all that. It is the north.
yeah,
northeast.
Towner, Ramsey, and Walsh County, Cavalier and Pembina counties with portions of Towner, Ramsey, and Walsh counties up in that area.
Great. Any other questions on those revolving loan fund apps that are below the threshold? Hearing none, that should conclude our business unless you have other business, Deanne.
Nope, just thank you all for signing that petition or the letter to go to the congressional delegation. I appreciate that very much. And I've got you 1 minute behind schedule right now, so I will let you keep moving on.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Right, North Dakota Housing Finance. Caitlin and Brandon, good to see you both. Thanks for coming over.
I'm glad to hear your statement on the buffalo and the bison. I've said that for years. So.
Well,
Thank you for backing me up.
Who asked you?
I just randomly spit out facts. I know that.
Yeah.
You can ask a lot of that.
True.
And Dave isn't here today. He is meeting with the new housing director at Standing Rock
Yeah,
today.
great.
So,
We're glad the USDA is on.
Okay, good deal.
So this is our annual income acquisition limits. So with our tax exempt mortgage revenue bonds, IRS has some limits we put on them. Every year they come out with new limits. First one is income limits. We're not changing acquisition limits. I'll tell you a little bit why after the income limits. So that gets a little interesting. But the limits changed this year. North Dakota's up about 3.5% compared to the national increase of about 1.66. Again, that's dependent on family size and the county you live in. So the new limits range from 103,900 to 128,110, depending on family size. And the 2 action items there are Exhibit 1 and Exhibit 2. And that is what our reservations for the first home would be under those limits. The advisory board further recommends those both be approved.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. And you said the maximum annual income in North Dakota went up faster than the rest of the nation.
Yes.
That's in terms of great additional eligibility.
Yeah.
But is that because of North Dakota's economy stronger, or is it because of some concern about housing inflation? What drives their formula?
That is basically just based on the HUD uses the American Community Survey every year. They survey about 1% of the population every year, and they go off of those numbers. So it is economy driven. So it's just based on North Dakota. So
Are they, because they're trying to figure out a percentage of our population that's below that number? Is that what they're trying to optimize for?
for the income limits?
Yeah.
No, they're just using, that's just kind of what HUD puts out as their average limits.
But it's a good thing for North Dakota borrowers that,
Yeah, anytime that goes up, that's great, because then they fit under our first home program, they get that nice low interest rate.
and we're seeking an official approval of this,
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
which is on attachment 8, the purple page. That's the one we're going on.
Yes.
Right now? Good.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. I'll call for the vote.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General,
Yes.
Governor.
Yes, motion carries.
And then just real quick on our acquisition limits, normally those increase every year too, and they did go up 6% this year. So currently we're at 481,176. However, this year we decided not to change that because really your loan amount is driven by your income limit. And really where our income limits are, it's hard to get up to that limit. And the other deciding factor is the IRS is considering next year changing their methodology on how they come up with their acquisition limits. Currently they go off of median home purchase price data. However, they're going to go off of FHA. I'm sorry, they want to start using the median home purchase price data instead of HUD income limits. So that's going to drastically reduce the amount next year. So we're projecting we could lose anywhere from 20 to 40% of our production if they make this change.
And what problem are they trying to solve?
They think the acquisition limits are too high. So they want to make them more in line with where they feel they should be. So currently our limits are statewide, and if they change it, it would go county by county. Just giving an idea, some of the smaller counties, again, where they are, they're going to go down into the, so, like Cass County right now, it's 481, Cass County go $290,000. So a little bit harder for a first time home buyer to buy a house in Fargo at $290,000.
Yeah, the inventory of the availability would be pretty small.
Yeah, and then you look some of those small
And then
counties,
if you have small inventory and a lot of people chasing it, guess what? The price goes up and then there's no homes. to
especially
buy.
if rates drop.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the real problem is the rural counties. I mean, some of those are under the $50,000-$70,000. So,
Oh, jeez. You
So-
couldn't even buy the lumber to build it.
no, and even a manufactured home, you couldn't do it. So our National Council of State Housing Agencies is going to fight against this, and we're going to submit a letter fighting against it too. With just heard from Independent Community Bankers Association, North Dakota, they're going to just send a letter in fighting it as well too. So
I'm sure if you want a letter with 3 industrial commissioners' signatures on it, I'm sure you could get one. So think about that if that's and then of course, we are doing these housing roundtables around the state. We should make sure this gets plugged directly into the work that's going on, because this would be a huge change.
Yeah.
If that happened next year.
And they're
mean,
talking about, not a swift change. They might do it over a course of 5 years, 20% a year, or they might leave it where it is until it gets up to that level, which we'd be okay with that, but ideally it's not a great thing to do. So. 56, the limit's really high right now. So if it stays there, we're fine for should be a number of years until we get up to that limit.
Yep. Okay, good update. Thank you.
On to the bonds.
Yes,
All right. So,
at
and,
9.
all right, back in December, you guys signed an annual authorizing resolution that approved us to issue $450 million in bonds for the calendar year 2024. So to date, we've issued $189 million. On March 26th, we closed on the 2024 AB series, which you guys see on the sheet you have in front of you. That was for $189 million in bonds. $149 million of this was tax exempt and $40 million was taxable. Our tax exempt bonds had a bond yield of 4.37, you can see on the sheet, and then the taxable had 5.72 for yield. So our weighted average interest rate that we were able to offer under the First Home Program with this financing here was 5.15. Our lowest rate was 4.75, which is about 1.5% below the market. We got up to about 2% when interest rates went up, but 1.5 is basically where we averaged, which is good. If we take the 1.5% and compare that at our average loan rate, which is $230,000, that's saving a borrower about $220 a month in principal and interest. So pretty good impact on our side of things. So overall, given the favorable pricing for our bonds here on the mortgage revenue bond side, we've gone through our proceeds here, and we're looking to issue our next bond here. Actually, we'll price next week, and we'll be doing $200 million just because our pipeline is growing so quickly. For the month of May so far, we're already at 45 million. So really mortgage revenue bonds and the ability for us to use that volume cap is huge with us providing the down payment assistance and everything. So then new this time, I included on the second sheet on the back, just information on who our buyers are or who's putting in bids for our bonds so that you can see the names, the accounts that are coming in. And then two, if we're oversubscribed on each of the different series. So just a little bit more information, because I know during our strategic review, the governor had asked for info on that. So obviously, they don't all get the bonds because we don't have enough for everybody. But yeah, that's kind of the update that I have for you. And like I said, next week we'll price 200 million, and right now the yield's looking about 4.34. It could change any day. I think PCI comes out this week, right? And who knows what'll happen, so.
On some of these, on the tax exempt and taxable buyers you got listed here in the thing, I mean, there's some great names on there, but are some of these people this regular, every time we offer something, they want to get in line because they know us and love North Dakota?
Yeah, there's a lot, actually. Some of the retail like us, but we don't have a ton of retail. It's more local banks. But yes, there are some that are always in there. The Vanguards, Nuveen seems to be in there quite a bit. So overall, though, really good. Good numbers.
And then it says stock on the bottom. Is that like held in, what's the definition of stock in that chart?
It would be individuals that are using money from their stock account.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but most of this you're going to see is more money market, bond funds, and just individuals that have a buyer here locally, really likely retail, that say, I want mortgage revenue bonds and I want North Dakota. So.
Is it next week you're going out, or?
Yes.
And,
yeah, we'll price Thursday.
And with the, they've been kind of dancing around these, are they changing rates this year or not? What is this, how are you feeling about next week with the?
Pretty steady, I would say, this week to next week. I don't think that the Fed, obviously, they can't drop rates next week or this week, but what our advisors are saying is they're thinking maybe December, one rate drop. They're not talking a bunch of drops this year. So, and truth be told, our rate is so far below market that if we come out at 4.34, we still have a lot of room to move to be at market and still be competitive. So we're not worried if rates change, which they're not going to, crazy in the next couple of months. This money will only last us potentially through the end of the year, if that. So that's what I have. Any other questions?
On the, do you have a sense of how many mortgages because you guys are gaining share right now in the market because you've got the best priced mortgages in the state, but how many homes are being built, do you think, across the state because of the fact that you're able to provide mortgages that people can try to afford?
Right. I'm not sure, to be honest. Yeah. We're surprised that the pipeline is as big as it is right now, because to us, it seems like there's an inventory shortage, right? But people seem to be finding houses in this affordable range. And it might be due to the fact that we have such a low rate. They can make the numbers. But I don't know what the new production has been, recently that could be financed under our program.
Under first home, it's probably small just because of the cost of new construction, where our limit is 481. It's hard to build. We hear from Bismarck and Fargo, it's hard to build under 400.
We are hearing though from realtors that if you do see houses in that 350 and under range, it's really competitive. They're getting multiple offers, moving quickly because that's who's buying.
Yeah. Great. Well, good luck on the bond issue.
Thanks. Yeah, it's always a good time.
Yeah. Any other questions for Brandon or Kayla? Thanks for coming over. Say hi to Dave. Will do.
We will. Thank you, guys.
Okay, next up is renewable energy. Charlie. Charlie, thanks for coming down.
Absolutely, Governor. All right, Governor, Commission members, if you recall, last month we held our 53rd grant round of the Renewable Energy Program, and the Renewable Energy Council recommended one application for your approval. We currently have 2.7 million available in the Renewable Energy Fund, which is more than enough to cover the cost of this application. And if you recall, at your last meeting, you had requested some more information about the grant application. So today we have Charlie here with the ERC to present more information.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Reese. First, I want to start by just going back. Slides forward. Oh, there we go. Just takes a minute. Yeah. In 2021-22, in partnership with the Transmission Authority, we actually conducted under the State Energy Research Center a grid resilience assessment that identified 3 major areas where we have risk to our grid. Natural threats, technology threats, and man-made threats. And the reason I'm bringing this up is this study that we're looking to propose to you today is really carrying on that grid resilience assessment effort. So with electric vehicles and electric vehicle infrastructure, we have many of these same threats to our potential grid.
I see you had generation inadequacy under technical. Isn't that man-made right now?
Right.
We have policies that are shutting down base load. I would think you could have that in both buckets.
You sure could. Certainly with increased demand, increased load from EV stations, as this study is looking at, or data centers and AI, we could have inadequacy from our grid and inadequacy from generation. So really what this study is looking at is how would we, as a region, handle increased EVs in EV charging stations? What would be their potential impacts? How could that influence or affect the state and the grid adversely? And how would we prepare ourselves as a region to be able to handle those challenges? This is a collaboration between multiple state agencies as well as electrical generation, tribal communities as well, Standing Rock and Red Lake, and tribal energy groups. And again, it's looking to how do we develop a roadmap to handle, plan for, react to anticipated, unanticipated disruptions to our grid from charging station infrastructure primarily. They could represent a substantial increase of load at peak demand times. So for EV charging, when it happens at home, it's usually off-peak time. But if we're looking at EV infrastructure that's happening while traveling, like along I-94, I-29, that could actually happen during peak demand time, which could create substantial issues. And this is regardless of who puts those stations in. It could create a lot of issue with the grid and inadequacy in power on the power side. So what we're aiming to do here with this assessment is then identify and address any of those potential regional EV infrastructure related challenges and how we might mitigate those and develop a roadmap or a strategy so that North Dakota DOT and emergency management can have a plan as we see potentially more EVs on the roads and how that might impact us.
Is there anything that the DOD has done that recognizes the fact that cold weather is a major factor in performance? I mean, because I'm sort of questioning then, is this study going to look at that? Because even my own personal interaction with the DOD, they did not have an understanding. They're trying to have a one size fits all 50 miles between every station, whether you're in, Arizona or whether you're in North Dakota. And there's just some, temperature driven latitude seasonal things that would affect how this would work and demands on the grid and how long it takes to recharge. And it just seems like they hadn't considered any of that at the federal level.
Yeah, and at the federal level, I think this is part of their way to address that is by having these regional plans. So it's a big difference here in North Dakota, Minnesota, Montana, South Dakota, compared to, as you point out, Florida or California. And weather is absolutely one of the aspects. We address those 3 areas, the natural, and that's whether extreme storms, extreme cold events. We saw in national news this winter, all these stranded EVs in, I believe it was Chicago. So emergency management needs to be able to handle that. We can't have cars stalled out all over across our state and in rural areas. So this would help, first of all, understand the impacts of those, what kind of infrastructure would be necessary in order to have that, but also emergency management plans. How do we deal with those cold weather events and their potential impact on the charging stations, but not only that, with vehicle EVs stranded on the roads. Be part of that.
As part of this, is there going to be a feedback loop where these 4 states could just go back and go, this plan doesn't work? I mean, that's part of like it doesn't make sense. I mean, at the levels that might have been envisioned.
Well, and it's not to assess feasibility of EVs. That's not the purpose of this study. It's how we as a region, a state would address the, again, EV charging stations that are added to our area, whether it's by private entities or other, the impacts and how do we handle that. You could make your own assessment based on the results of this, whether it's a good idea to have an EV, if there's sufficient infrastructure, whether there's sufficient that makes sense for a person. You could make that assessment, because certainly we'll identify things, as you point out, like cold weather, what the impacts are. A large amount of rural areas in our state and the impacts. The feasibility then could be easily drawn upon in our region from this. But this would help us to be able to say these are some of the potential challenges and how we could mitigate that. Cold is just one of those potential challenges. These direct to DC fast charging stations draw a lot of power. And again, if there was a series of those along an interstate corridor, an extreme cold weather event, needing to stop midday when peak demand is happening and charging, that can cause an issue for grid reliability. There might not be power available. You might have to plan for, if there's not sufficient generation and transmission, you might have to plan for blackouts or brownouts related to that, which is a non-starter, I recognize, but this will be identified in the study as well.
So there might have to be generation at key locations that absolutely have to have power, whether it's a long-term care facility, a hospital, storage units. I mean, places where you're going to impact people's lives.
Or maybe there's a plan that's put in place by the state to curtail the charging station, for example.
Because of the impacts down.
Yep.
Yeah.
Potentially, yeah.
That's where I was trying to get to, is do you have the information for us to protect ourselves from really bad policy ideas?
Yes. And it'll still be up to the state to decide how to and what parts to implement, if any, of the study. But this would provide the state with the information necessary to say, yes, if we do have 18 additional charging stations going along I-94 and 29, for example, these large DC charging stations, how would that impact us? What kind of emergency management plans will we need to put in place? What type of, and I haven't even gotten to cyber yet, but what kind of cyber protections will we need to put in place to ensure that our grid isn't at risk due to these charging stations being put in to allow for additional EVs?
Or as you said, curtailment, which is,
could be a choice. That'd be a policy choice that,
we're going to fund the things that Doug was talking about that are mission critical, as opposed to.
I was just thinking here, when you were talking about emergency services, imagine somebody being stranded because they have a electric vehicle, middle of winter. We have a fire, we have an accident, all of a sudden we have to send emergency services to go and address. It's a human safety issue, but yeah, you have somebody stranded because their battery on their phone still works, but their battery in their car doesn't.
right, and they're stranded on 94
Yeah,
between Bismarck and Jamestown or whatever. Yeah,
and
exactly.
you got to run out and deal with that. That's going to be a huge impact to our population.
So will you do some load modeling as part of this? Because you can figure out what the cumulative effect on the demand side is going to be if this, some of these federal things, that would help us
Right.
take some preventative action from a policy standpoint.
Yes.
Okay.
And then working with the power producers to be able to say that there's not as I understand it, there's not a lot of say from the power producers and the co-ops on what load gets dropped where, especially when they're the smaller loads, but they can be cumulatively a lot. So this would help us understand that, the impacts, and again, allow for policy decisions to be made to better prepare us. Again, regardless of who is for a charging station.
And maybe you're going to cover this, but ERC taking the lead, but this was a grant that's designated for Montana, Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota. So what level of the participation are we getting from other states?
We're getting participation in time and their involvement in it. This was a proposal by the EERC, led by the EERC to the federal call. So the money will all be spent in North Dakota. None of the money would be spent outside of North Dakota. North Dakota, as cost share partner to it, would also have the lead seats in this, of course. The impacts that we uncover through the investigation will not only benefit North Dakota, but also our neighboring states as well. So spacing, temperatures, climate is similar, of course. So a lot of the same things would benefit them. But there are, if you looked at the partners list, there are more North Dakota partner lists, DOT, Commerce from North Dakota. We do have DOT from Montana and Minnesota also would benefit from this investigation, and then the tribal nations, Standing Rock, and then in Minnesota, Red Lake.
So digging into this a little bit more, it looks like DOE is the major funder of all of it.
1.5
One
million.
point 5 million.
And then 375,000 is the required cost share. It's an 80-20 requirement. North Dakota would be covering in cash the remaining balance, the other 20%.
So moved.
Got a motion? We have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any additional questions or comments?
No, I think you did a pretty good job. You're looking at a holistic approach to this, which is going to cover the gamut from one end of the spectrum to the other.
Right. And I just want to point out, I don't want to stall it out, but I do also want to point out the cyber risks that charging stations as potential conduits for cyber attacks into our grid. So to be able to understand what those potential threats are and shore ourselves up against them.
Yeah.
That'll also
Good.
be assessed.
Because the more stations, the more surface area of potential attack points.
Yeah, exactly.
Point of entry.
Each individual fast charging station is a potential conduit or to the grid or a cyber attack to the grid.
Okay, call for the vote.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General,
Yes.
Governor,
Yes, motion carries. Any other renewable business? Reese, anything
No.
else?
No,
All right, Charlie, thanks for coming down.
Thank you.
Ignite Research. Reese, Mike, and Claire.
All right, under attachment 11 in your binders, you'll see the Lignite Research Program Project Management and Financial Reports. On page 2 of the report, you'll see a dashboard overview of all the Industrial Commission managed funds and where Lignite Research Fund fits into that. The next page will dive in a bit more into the Lignite Research Fund balance. What you have available to commit today is just over $5.2 million. You have a total cash balance of $26.9 million. Of that, $21.6 million is committed to existing projects and for other administrative costs. You've funded 255 cumulative projects since its inception. What that means for North Dakota is $2.8 billion in private sector dollars that have been invested in North Dakota, thanks to your investments in the Lignite Research Fund. The next page, I show a breakdown of where your funding comes from. 100% funded by energy industry tax dollars. It's a combination of lignite coal conversion, coal severance taxes, and oil and gas extraction and production taxes. So to date, your fund has received $2.3 million from coal conversion and severance taxes. Your buckets for the oil revenue haven't started filling yet, but we're expecting actually this month that bucket will start to fill. And once it starts to fill, it'll fill pretty rapidly. So we are pretty confident that by the next time we have a Lignite Research Council meeting, we will have that full 10 million as well from the oil revenues. And then lastly, the applications you have before you today, you have 3 applications as well as 1 request from the Transmission Authority. Those requests total just over 4.2 million. So with your 5.2 million available, you have enough in your fund today to cover all of the requests before you today. That's all I have on my report.
Questions for Reese? Thanks for the update. Welcome, Mike. Good to see you.
Good to see you all. Thank you for having me. So that I don't wear out my welcome, giving the R&D update, I'm shooting for under 10 minutes. So please ask questions for any more detail. The first slides cover where that funding Reese just presented is currently at in the active projects. And the first one I care less about, it's the number count. So if you look in the gray half of the pie, about 50% of the projects are emerging uses for our 800-year supply of lignite, which by the time we get done with 800 years, we'll have turned it into double. So we've got a lot of lignite available. Those are the options. And then if you look at, for example, the blue, less than 20% of the number of projects is in carbon management. But then this slide tells a better story, and that is where are we investing in terms of dollars? And if you look in terms of dollars, those emerging markets are 11% of the state's investment. And most of the financial investment is in the carbon management, the CO2 capture, utilization, storage, looking at use for enhanced oil recovery, things like that. And then if you look on the right side, that's just the same graph, but leveraged with federal funding. So it shows that the 44 million currently active is the resulting total project value is 161 plus $1 million. So next, to keep it down into a short discussion, I've got one opening slide, and then I'll just cover the topics of the projects that are getting presented to you today. And so this is the breakdown. This is the guidance we get from industry that says the topics of most interest are to continue to support the existing assets we have, that existing fleet, through operation, efficiency, all that, and regulation. The second one is the next generation power, and we've got EERC working on the $500,000 study on the next lignite-fired power plant of the future. The third one's that focus on carbon capture. The fourth one is just looking at what they're doing internationally, leveraging the R&D and technology breakthroughs for our benefit. And then the final one is that focus on the other uses for the lignite that is available to us.
Mike, if you go back on the, you're talking about the lignite plant of the future.
Yeah.
We've had this big shift globally now where we got, I mean, Japan's building coal plants.
Mm-hmm.
Germany's back building coal plants. I mean, we knew India and China were opening up one every 2 weeks, but the thought was they were probably building them on 1970s and 80s technology in China.
Yep.
So what's the opportunity for the US to export next gen coal technology, and how far along, how's that project come along, and what are some of the potential breakthroughs?
Yeah, so it gets to be a complicated answer. They definitely have to look at higher temperature materials so you can improve efficiency right off the bat by running higher temperature steam cycles. But then the next goes from some of the more developmental, less proven technologies like high pressure fluid bed. One of my favorites, Alaska's currently looking at the same thing we are. But I like the idea of gasification because it allows you the flexibility of your product suite if you don't have full-time electricity demand and other products. So there's a lot of technologies out there, different cycles, different temperatures, and about 40% roughly of that $500,000 study is on honing in on the right technology options. But the other part is, all right, where would it best be located in terms of the transmission? What are the permitting, regulatory, that type of thing? So we're looking more North Dakota centric opportunity and how do we accomplish it?
Thank you.
So, yeah. But the technology is always evolving. So there we go. So with the carbon capture, transportation, and then storage, we've got a lot of projects going. Before I get into them, I can't help but put up these two slides because North Dakota has so much going for it. In addition to its geology, the oil and gas is the ultimate goal because it's such a big part of our state's economy. And if you look at the end of a carbon capture project, you can look at using that for enhanced oil recovery. This first slide is the ERC slide showing the potential for just conventional oil. We could get an additional 1 billion barrels of oil by using CO2 as a commodity. And that's why we always hear Lynn say we got to quit closing out wells that have that potential. But then the next slide shows the real prize that's out there, and that is the Bakken with 2 to 3 billion tons of CO2 potential commodity need for as high as 7 billion barrels of incremental oil. And currently ERC has a project that's been awarded to do one of those first demonstrations for that tight oil in the Bakken with CO2. I think they're using a lot of natural gas as a surrogate, but that's the end goal, is doubling the life and doubling the production volume of the Bakken. So before I skip on from that to the projects, there's also, we see DOE opportunities, and there's one out there currently that DOE is saying, hey, we got $500 million of federal funding for CO2 transport. So we also track those things and how to take advantage of that opportunity. So if you look at this, the projects that I decided to highlight in a short amount of time, we've got everything from the first one up there, which is Plain CO2 Reduction Partnership. That has paid off so well for us because now we understand our great geology. We've been leaders in everything from Class 6 primacy to the how you permit, how you operate a storage well. So that's just been great. And then in the middle, we see the 2 projects that were just completed in this past year for Project Tundra. The one on the left is the final study of the economics and the design, the CREST study. And now they're looking at their final information for commercial decision. And the one on the right is the geologic storage. And then the next one and the slide that follows are all of Rainbow's Coal Creek Station, carbon capture, utilization, and storage. And the pre-feed was under the Lignite Research Program that you supported. And then you also supported the feed study under the Clean Sustainable. That's ongoing, as well as 2 additional studies, one looking at the redundant equipment, and as with the other projects, the other is looking at that geologic storage opportunity. So great work going on there. And then you'll hear about the parallel project that's proposed in a bit. So just a few more slides to go over the background. This first one is on the rare earth element critical minerals. Some of the projects I highlighted on this one are everything from the EERC carbon ore rare earth critical mineral project, evaluating the resources, to the University of North Dakota's pilot facility that's now in the front end engineering and design study, and is 1 of 2 projects that is looking at that down select for a pre-commercial system. And then we got work on germanium, gallium, which China's put export controls on, and we happen to have good opportunity in North Dakota. So we've got those. Just close that by saying again, the end products that need those chemical vitamins are 500 times more valuable than the rare earth critical minerals themselves. So we as a nation have to shore up that supply. This is
statement again.
Yeah, so if you look at the estimates of where the global market is, and then you look at where the end products market is, that can't be weapons, optics, things like that, that can't be made without rare earths and critical minerals, it's 500 times the value of those end products as the cost of their rare earths and critical minerals needed to make them. So if the U.S. somehow gets held hostage on the supply, which we get almost 100% of them from China, then we're hurting for those end products. So if you look at somewhere where a federal investment and making sure federally that we assure we have those ingredients needed to make these valuable end products, that's one of the areas that we really should need to pay attention to. But hey, I don't work in the federal.
We're creating the policy-wise, is we're creating massive dependence on our adversaries for mission critical supply chains around rare earth minerals.
And so I would think this would be one where we could have put a floor price, even if it's at where the value is currently, so someone doesn't dump into the market and the price drops out on the startup company, or a guaranteed life expectancy of your supply and demand. things like that. This is on the building materials. We've got several great projects going on. I selected the Semplastics one. Has both the building materials they're making out of coal and coal ash. And they're everything from roofing tiles, concrete block replacements that are way lighter, more flexural and compaction strength, and economical. So we've got those. We've got one by Microbeam, also looking at building materials. And then we've got the one where they're taking CO2 from power plant or wherever and turning it into ceramic tiles. So, but that gets us to carbon products from coal, and then one more slide. So the first, after Reese does one of the projects is on this AmeriCarbon. The first one is their pitch that they make from lignite coal. The second one is their needle coke, which is a precursor to graphite. And the third one is their graphite end product. And then if you make the graphite into graphene, you're taking coal from $20 a ton and turning it into 3 orders of magnitude more value when you make graphene sheets. So
What do they do with graphene?
so the graphite is for battery anodes, things like that. And graphene is for very strong and also very conductive materials. So, and another thing that's interesting about this one is also the supply and demand globally problem, which, yeah, I'll cut to the chase with the last slide because I think I already used my 10 minutes. but the batteries, EVs, energy storage, all the lithium ion batteries that are out there need these materials for their anodes, things like that, as well as other carbon materials. So tremendous demand. In fact, they're saying in the next 6 years, we expect a 300% increase in demand for graphite in the US. And this, I went to a University of Kentucky roundtable discussion, and this was kind of the punchline of what came out of that is 92% of the graphite is that we get is from China. So we're again dependent on China. And then that 300% increase in the next 6 years. So the market, when you look at the opportunity, the market is just incredible. And these guys are, I went and toured their facility, and they're saying that they will be disappointed if they don't have a facility in McLean County in the next 3 years. So they're working really hard on that. So that.
You said these guys, meaning who?
AmeriCarbon, and they have a bunch of investors lined up. So their first one, so I guess I better get to the slides before I really blow your schedule.
So on any of these, just to be clear, like on any of these value-added carbon derivatives, whether building materials or the graphite and this stuff, if for some reason you stop doing lignite energy production, don't all of those become unreachable financially? Because don't you have to have some revenue stream that's paying for the mining itself and getting at the volume of lignite to be able to access these components that are part of the lignite?
So you're definitely right that even though they use, especially for graphite, a smaller amount of lignite, the other one that I really like is asphalt binder. But if you didn't have a operating coal plant, then you'd be going after just a small amount of coal, and your economics would definitely change. So.
But when you say people are coming here and want to be here, they're coming here because they believe we're going to have operating baseload energy plants, and they're going to have access to lignite without having to have to be doing strip mining themselves.
Yeah, and we've, as a state, we've done such a good job of common sense policy and leaving the door open for people that are going to put clean projects together that make sense. Everything from the legislation that we got doing a tax credit for the first of a kind rare earth as well as emerging markets, that type of thing really does make a difference. And I've gotten these guys in touch with Commerce locally. So, all right, so Reese here, the first of the 4 projects, and then I'll get back to these 2.
All right, the first application before you today is submitted by Lignite Energy Council. Therefore, I will present this one to you. It is a request for $1.8 million with a total cost of $3.6 million with a project duration of 3 years. This is phase 9 of the Lignite Energy Council's public affairs project for the lignite industry in North Dakota. Your independent technical reviewers, average score was 207 out of 250, which was a recommendation of fund. And your Lignite Research Council voted to recommend funding to you today. So the purpose of the project is for targeted awareness campaigns, marketing, education, and outreach related to the benefits of the lignite industry in North Dakota. And in Century Code, the goals of the Lignite Research Program are for the Industrial Commission to include a component of marketing and outreach for the lignite industry. So given all of that context, I would recommend consideration and happy to answer any questions.
So moved.
Second. Got a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion? Call for the vote.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General.
Yes.
Governor.
Yes. Mike, back to you.
Thank you. And the next study under consideration is the bridge study at the Coal Creek Station. And their total project size is 2.19 million, and the request is for 1.09. And it is, well, they're continuing their sharpening their pencil on the feed study and that sort of thing. They've got, they want it in the next 10 months in parallel, and with good reason. They want to get closer at the particulate coming out of the system, how that'll impact degradation of the solvent, things like that. And also look closer at the economics as well as the design related to that particulate, and get a better handle on things. And let's see if the one pager. So there's the 3 scores gave them a very high average score of 225, all 3 recommended funding. And I've already gone through the task list, but it's that cost estimate review in the next level of detail with the flue gas characterization and looking at the impacts of that on the design. So that's it, that one. And I guess
So
it just,
moved.
okay.
Don't talk yourself out of it.
I'm done.
We have a motion and a second, and that was on 104B. Was that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
We need to call for the vote.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General.
Yes.
Governor.
Yes, motion carries.
And then this is the other one we talked about from AmeriCarbon, the one that would like to work toward a commercial plant. And the other thing, in addition to what we talked about with the availability of quantities of coal, they also have found that the lignite is very attractive feedstock for this system. They're asking for 743,809 out of a total of 1.488 million. And there we go.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions on 104C? Call for the vote.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General.
Yes.
Governor.
Yes.
They're good projects if you want a little encouragement.
Yeah, they are. Thank you guys.
On this last one, on examples of applications, I mean, there's a big opportunity here for potentially for roadways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Tell us the exciting upside here.
So when they went into the graphite one, I loved the expanding and the value. But then I said, wait, what about asphalt binder? And they said, yeah. And I said, all right, let's push it. So I've got them in touch with the Upper Great Plains Transportation Institute, and they're working with others to make this an asphalt binder potential too, because it would be a lot more quantities. But some of the others are the carbon materials we talked about with the graphene, as well as carbon black, which is for tires. And part of the reason we're short in this country is we have finite fluid cat crackers, meaning oil refineries, and no more steel industries. So this will replace that, as well as the growth. Tremendous options for end product use.
And how do they achieve the 92% reduction on the greenhouse side, which again would,
Oh, So that's their version. So what it is it's comparing it to the traditional way of getting this tar and pitch is through metallurgical coke processes where you're only making about 15% of your coal into this. And it's a high temperature steel process where this is a much milder, lower pressure, lower temperature. And so they got a lot lower CO2 footprint than you would have for any of these same end products.
Could give them a premium and
Yeah.
for those that want to pay for low carbon products.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Covered it? All right. Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
Thanks, Reese.
Sorry, we have Transmister 30 request now.
Okay. All right.
Governor and Commissioners, thanks for having us. Just a little history. We got our first DOE award for the IIJA Grid Resilience Grant back a year ago in May, $7.5 million. It coincided with the 68th legislative session, so we were able to get a match for that. And EERC manages the contract. On that first round, we had 12 applications. Request projects that would total 33 million and grant requests of 17 million. And even though we had only $8 million available grants, and then we had technical review committees and we approved 4 top scoring grants last December. As Reese puts this together, for every dollar the state's invested, there's $21 invested by the private sector. So very positive for North Dakota. And then in 2024, January 24, you approved us moving forward to apply for the next round fiscal year 24 formula grant of 3.8 or $3.9 million. It requires a state match of over $500,000. And we discussed this earlier, but the timing was off to get legislative appropriation. We recommended we go to the Emergency Commission. Reese prepared documents to get funding from the Emergency Commission and learn that they didn't have the bandwidth to fund it. So we went to Mike's council and requested gap coverage for that 15% match from the Lignite Research Council until we can have the opportunity to go to the next legislative session. Now it's possible we wouldn't get funding from the legislature, but that would be our purpose, is to get funding in place for the match for the remainder of these years of this grant. So it likely won't be drawn upon from the Research Council because of the timing for the projects. They won't be done until spring of 2025. So if we're successful with the legislature, we'll have the match available. So what we're asking from the commission here is approval of the action that the Lignite Research Council took to provide this gap of 15%.
So move. 582,000, right? $95. Okay. Yeah.
No, sorry. So I just wanted for my fellow commissioners and others in attendance, the second line there, emerging commission funding limited. The funding's not limited. There's these crazy caps that got put on during COVID, which artificially restrict the ability for the industrial commission, or not the emergency commission, actually do their work. I mean, the whole point of it is between sessions to be able to do it, and the caps are so low that we got 13 months left in the year, and you can't go, you can't give the legislature an opportunity, because the way it's set up now with the emergency commission appropriate, it goes to budget section. You've got a whole group of people that could say, hey, putting 15% match might be a good thing against this kind of project, but you don't even get the opportunity to do that because you're hitting the caps already, and it doesn't. It's just anyway, that part is something that I'm inviting everybody to help continue to push back on the industrial commission, all the research groups, everybody, because these are exactly the kinds of things that the emergency commission can handle, which is you get a federal grant program now that are, and in the last 4 years, federal grant programs have expanded by over 200 additional new programs. I mean, there's never been as many programs as we have now. And then these caps would allow the emergency commission to handle like something like 1/10 of 1% of a 2-year budget. I don't know anybody in the private sector that budgets with that level of precision 2 years out, because you don't anticipate what's coming, and we have these things that come and then we can't act on them. So I think I support the motion we've just made. And then we're going to try to game the timing here a little bit. I shouldn't say game, but basing on the timing of it, but go back and ask for a legislative max. We could include this in the budget that we go in with next year. This specifically, we should make sure Reese and that gets in, Karen. So we'll do that. But I just want to make the point that you wouldn't be wasting your time listening to me go through this, because this could have already been approved at a prior emergency commission funding if we didn't have these artificially low caps that never existed in 100 years till a couple of years ago. Thank you for that paid commercial. I'm feeling slightly better now. So. But we'll call for the vote.
Commissioner?
Yes.
Attorney General?
Yes.
Governor?
Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Claire.
Governor, if we may, just under other business, we did want to provide the commission a quick update on our final carbon rule modeling study and the impacts of EPA's carbon rule on our electric grid.
So, thank you again. First of all, I'd like to thank the Attorney General's office for the amazing work and the long hours that Bill and Katie have been doing on behalf. So this study was really important for the Attorney General's office to have data and information to fight these rules, and they've been most helpful in writing declarations on behalf of the North Dakota Transmission Authority, and they work long hours. I'm telling you, they should be sleeping when we get emails. So, but
Yeah, Bill got married in the middle of all of that, and then was continuing to work on that our honeymoon, which is going to make us very popular with his wife.
Katie's getting married in a
Yeah,
week or
Katie's
two.
right, exactly, Case.
So
Everything
John
they got
married.
personal lives.
So anyway, we commissioned this study with Isaac Orr and Mitch Rolling, and they started their own company. They used to be with the American Experiment. I love their name, Always On Energy Research. And we got the report back in on May 17, and grid reliability is a huge concern. And one of the things that EPA did is they reduced the demand forecast to make their rules look less onerous. And of course, the demand forecast is blowing out of the water. It should have been just the opposite. If you look at this graph here, the red line is what their target reserve margin should be for generation. And the black line across the top is actually the projected peak demand for, and this one happens to be for MISO. This study was done for both MISO and SPP. But if you can see, even in 2028, that black line, projected peak demand, is depending on storage and load management or curtailment, are the dark blue. But if you go on years past that, then they're in the wind, relying on wind for meeting peak demand, which is dangerous. And I just took a couple slides. You have a whole copy. You have the full report, the 50 pages, but here is MISO, and those red areas took a day in 2020 and demand and weather, and then put what the power supply would be in 2025, and those red areas are when the lights are out. Lights out. So that looks not good, but wait till you see SPPs if you haven't had a chance to see that. SPP in 2028 is depending on solar and wind for their projected peak demand, and their reserve margins are way above the graph. And then you look forward, it's really frightening. And yeah. So then if you look at their the capacity shortfalls, SPP, this is using 2021 demand and weather. And this is 24, it's a different year, but there's tremendous shortfalls. So there's 50 pages to support that. And thanks to Jonathan at the Lignite Council, Lignite Energy Council, and he worked with industry to help put together this report. Not to scare you, but it's horrible.
It's good information.
Thank you for your time. It's horrible.
You know, I keep wondering, like, what we do enough to make sure that information is going out from these matters. I'm sure it's going to read beautifully. I'll look forward to reading it also. We all will. And how many people will read it? I don't know. How do we publicize it and highlight it? Because the public has these too many wrong notions about the scarcity that issues that are about to come, that they're being imposed for no appreciable benefit. We've seen that with mass rule and other things as they come along too. They create scary concepts, and public understandably reacts to that. But I mean, it's good this research is going on, and we're talking about all of this, but I don't think it means that much. If the public doesn't hear about it, they just think to themselves, "Oh, carbon neutral, that sounds great." All these things that they've been taught to believe sound great, no appreciable benefit, except that, as the governor points out a lot of times, capital's flowing that way because people like the sound of that. And we are dooming ourselves. We're dooming the utilization of this vast resource. We're having conversations today also about all the spin-off, great, exciting ways to utilize our lignite. That's exciting. But we also have this essential life sustaining need. So that out there, I don't know what we can do to make sure that the broader public is aware of these findings so that they stop being so susceptible to cheap political arguments that happen and have real actual information. And then look at these charts and say, it's not just scary. That's not the word that it is. It's life ending. If we get to this point, we're going to be that year or two when we get in there and things are really teetering, and we're going to have a real problem come along. The Alberta Clipper comes, and all of a sudden we're like, we just weren't prepared for it. And yet 10 years ago, we told you this was coming. We all, I don't know if I've gained understanding about it much in the last 2.5 years, but I'll tell you, this is one area. I just feel like we need to do more. The public has to be aware of this because they are not because they're dumb. They're just not, they're not given this information. These are important matters. Our legislature does incredible work to support this industry, support the utilization of this God-given resource. We've got to do more for the public to be aware. Yes, there are spin-off, great idea. That's great. That won't sustain the industry. And we're not just doing it as a jobs program. We're doing it as a matter of life and death for life in this part of the world. I know I'm preaching to the choir. I'm not even really preaching. I'm just saying, what can we do to talk about it more in a way that the public gains insight so they can insist on certain things from their policymakers?
Well, I think the Attorney General hit on probably the very point that we need to address. Probably a 2-paragraph press release that focuses, narrows down without getting into the weeds, because too often, look at all the things underneath there.
Yeah.
You just, you don't need that.
I
You
tried to
just
make
need
it
to
simple,
say,
yeah.
the study says, this is our concern. This is our concern going forward. These are the potential impacts. Leave it at that and just continue to voice our
We do it
concerns.
over and over and over and over, but it's got to be continued. North Dakota legislature, now legislatures, they get beat up for a lot of things. They've been so forward thinking on this for so long and thinking out around the corner. And I suppose people think, oh, the lobbyist bought him dinner or something. And we all see this. It's been pretty visionary for a long while, and we're in a much stronger position because of it. It won't last forever. Not as the world's working against us on the information front. And I think, I don't have an answer for it. I'm not a marketing person, but we better do something to make sure that we empower the voters of this state who are always heard. When they want to be heard, they're heard, and we can empower them. I mean, want to be clear, obviously we all know our legislature's been fantastic. What are we doing, regionally and nationally? Because the lawsuits aren't going to cut it either. We can keep cutting checks and bringing lawsuits, but there's a hostility out there, I think, born of really a lack of awareness. People don't see what's coming, and they should key in next winter and watch the hearings of the North Dakota legislature talk about these things. Why are they throwing money at this? Why are they doing that? They're doing it out of a sense of realization of what's coming.
Well, I hear two action items. One of them is just about, 30 minutes ago, we approved $1.1 million for the biannual marketing program. And it seems that the marketing has always been good, but there needs to be a dial up because the issues with MISO and SPP used to be 2035 and now they're 2025. So we've got to have some of that to be the Paul Revere call of federal policies that eliminate base load are going to drive us towards man-made blackouts and brownouts. So I think there's a component there. The shorter term, I think the commissioner's point on the press thing is clear. You opened by saying that this whole study where they were pushing, an ideology was based on a forecast where demand is down. And that world does not exist because we're artificially driving demand up with all the subsidies related to the whole EV ideology. And then we've also got this thing called AI, which none of those policymakers were counting on even 2 years ago, that's driving real market demand as opposed to subsidized demand. And those two things are going to be in the data, the data demand is going to really hit North Dakota because you can't get a power line built in this country, and transmission lines, you can't get them built. But they subsidize broadband all over this country. And so if you build a data center here, the data can get out of North Dakota, but the electrons can't. So, this project that's coming to Ellendale is coming. I mean, it's going to 1.2 billion. It's going to take all of that power, and we're just going to see more and more of that coming. And we've got to be ready to say yes to all that. But at that point, that's not built into these models because, Minnesota voted and said they didn't want our certain color of our electrons. I mean, that's a euphemism, but, they didn't want our baseload electrons. By 2030, that may not be a problem because we might be using all those electrons in North Dakota for AI and data centers. We may become less than an exporter. We'll be exporting data, not electrons, which will accentuate all of these colors that you have here, because even this study probably doesn't fully capture the increased demand from AI that's accelerating and regionally where it's coming, because you can't build them anymore in Virginia because you can't get the power there. So they're all swimming upstream, come towards where the base load is. So there's a couple things there, but on this 2-paragraph thing that the commissioner was recommending, I support. We should be doing that, but we should lead with the idea that how it's just ridiculous that anything coming from the federal government right now that's based on a drop in demand for power at a time when we're going into a period of unprecedented increase, both real demand and subsidized demand.
I should clarify, it wasn't a drop in demand, but reduced it compared to what it was before.
It's false. I mean, the whole rule is based on an entirely false premise.
So I met with SPP last week and they've written a letter or, a statement, and their words were on this call, it's impossible. I think we can work with Reese on a press release, but
Press release, then we got to figure out ways to talk about things. Now, nobody pays attention to attorneys generals. But when governors speak to these things, or when our commission does, or when we meet with our colleagues from other states, we have got to do more, like to your point. And it's like, clarion call's got to go out. We got to do something to leverage that work. Like you say, you got to say, legislature's thinking around the corner, pouring resources into research, and people are doing that research or answering the call. Industry's been doing their jobs and beyond. So what are we going to do to highlight that? Not as a political exercise, as an exercise in public awareness, so they understand all this good is out there and possible, and not buy into this idea that, okay, well, there's going to be scarcity. We all accept that. And since there's going to be scarcity, let's figure out how much pain can we take? We need not have much. We need to be thinking ahead and planning though. So I just think we look for more and more and more ways to be communicating that publicly ad nauseum and finding ways for their reports. Yes, but is it digestible? Senator Hogue made a great point to me many years ago when I was chairing the State Investment Board. He's talking about, transparency and accessibility of information. We're going back and forth, and he's really easy to argue with because he doesn't get built in his positions at all. And so we're going through this, and I told him, I said, Senator, it's all right here. I went through all these reports, and he's like, I've never forgotten it. I've tried. We worked on it there when I was chairing the SIB and everything else. He said, Drew, depositing a pile of paper is not transparency. People don't At the time to go, and he made a big, you know what? I agree with that. Within a couple months, we had a 2 or 3 page document, not because people can't read more, because it made it condensed to where it mattered.
Yes.
Anyway, I'll stop. I'm taking much time, but let's be thinking more and more ways to highlight, not so we make, oh, then everyone will like our legislature more. They'll like the research council. No, so that people are aware of the work. They won't buy into this, oh, you got to accept the scarcity thing, so just take it, people. And, pull up to your electronic car. I'm sitting listening to this discussion about the electric vehicle gas pumps, whatever you want to call them. I haven't seen a damn vehicle at that thing in the last 3 years. I go up there, I go to Jimmy John's. I still have yet to see a vehicle backed up, but maybe it's coming. I don't know. We'll see.
So I take what the governor said, because I like that. That's a narrative you attach to the study. And then let's just do a two paragraph one for a press release. But that narrative, that condensed it, put it all right there. They can read that, then they can study the report.
Share the full report with the legislative council.
Yeah, for sure.
After
For sure.
this meeting, and also a shortened version.
Arm them with it. I mean, they should know the fruits of their efforts to put resources in the right direction and arm all of us, because time we get asked.
So last thing on this thing, and we'll go on, but I would say just a heads up for those people involved in baseload and lignite energy research and others, and those that might be concerned about federal subsidies related to 45Q. I think this is probably a group that's as well versed as anybody in the country that understands that, there's $60 federal support for enhanced oil recovery and $85 a ton for the storage permanently. The Hoover Institute's going to release information this week that they've gone through the math of adding up 500,000 EV charging stations, $7,500 a car, supporting, battery plants, manufacturing, all of these things, which have the secondary issues of those rare earth minerals from China, like we were talking about earlier. But if you're just taking the cost of all those subsidies, and then theoretically, if you drive, X number of 10,000 miles in an EV, then supposedly, if you're doing that, you would have been an internal combustion vehicle. So if I drive that EV, it's a displacement theory. It's like I'm going to displace a ton of CO2. So we know that Denbury's producing carbon negative barrel of oil in North Dakota. We know that we got Blue Flint and Red Trail that have got carbon neutral ethanol, which is now 15% of that vehicle, right? So that's not in their replacement theory. There's nothing in the replacement theory or the displacement theory that says that the internal combustion machine was going to get more and more efficient. There wasn't anything there. So they're chasing the innovation that's happening in North Dakota is making their math harder. And the math from the Hoover Institute doesn't take that into account. They're just starting with their math. You add up all those subsidies and it's over $900 a ton. So we're 15 times more efficient with what Denbury's doing, and we're 10 times more efficient with what the ethanol guys are doing. So if the only question was, we're not arguing about anything, we just said we want to get rid of a ton of CO2, what would be the most way to do it with the least harm on taxpayers? The least harm. You would come to North Dakota and you'd say, these guys are 10 to 15 times faster than what they say is their best idea. Not faster, 10 to 15 times more cost efficient. And that's standing still. That doesn't, as soon as we get more efficient, as soon as you take a Denbury barrel of oil and Red Trail or Blue Flint ethanol, well, then all of a sudden it could be 20 times more effective or 30 times more effective. Because we'll keep reducing the amount of CO2 per 10,000 miles, and they're stuck, with where they are, because they got physics on their side that doesn't make it allow it to be more efficient. So we can't be loud enough on this thing, because in this case, North Dakota is right. Innovation's beating regulation. We're not beating it by a little, we're beating it by huge margins. So look for that article coming from Hoover.
Thanks for your support.
Thank you.
Are you sensing that?
Yeah, I am.
Making sure. Thanks, Kate. Welcome, BND.
Good to be here. Good to see you. Good to have you. So, Claire used quite a bit of your time.
Jeez, Claire.
Well, don't be.
They're gonna get it right back in this first second. You got the guaranteed student loan program audit.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Daryl Lingle. I'm a partner with iBailey. And I'm here to cover the guaranteed student loan program and then the Bank of North Dakota audited financial statements. So we will start with the North Dakota Guaranteed Student Loan Program audit. Page number 1 is the independent auditor's report. And we've issued an unmodified opinion over the financial statements and the related notes to the financial statements. That's a clean opinion. Similar opinion is what we've given in the previous years as well. Next, if I could have you turn to page number 16 of the financial statements. And that would be the independent auditor's report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance and other matters based on.
Which one are you starting on, Daryl? Starting on the bank or on the student loan?
On student loan.
Okay, all right,
Yep,
thank you.
yep.
Okay,
Yep, page 16.
got it, yep.
All right. And that would be our independent auditor's report on internal control over financial reporting, compliance and other matters. We had no internal control matters that were required to be reported. None were identified. And we had no instances of non-compliance or other matters that were required to be reported as well. And then as far as the financial statements themselves and the related notes, really a basic year this year, basic blocking and tackling that occurred during the year. So nothing special that occurred with the guarantor program this year.
I'm assuming that, great job, clean audit, fully expected, but Daryl, the scope of your audit did not include external risks related to federal policy changes where they're telling everybody else you don't have to repay your loans. I'm assuming that's outside the scope of the audit.
What it isn't, Governor. As part of our risk assessment procedures, there are those external economic factors that we do consider as part of our audit. Once we get down to that level of what the effect and what federal policy would have on the state of North Dakota on this program, it would not get to that level where we would consider that to be a significant enough risk that would change our audit approach.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Well, just if you're doing this again next year, I mean, Todd and the team know, I mean, I just feel like we got a $1.2 billion portfolio and we're living in a world where a lot of people think that if they just wait long enough, the federal government's going to, quote, forgive their loan.
Right.
And I think that psychologically has got to happen. Thankfully, we have it. I mean, we're tracking, we ask
Yep.
every month, how we doing on, delinquencies and et cetera. But it's, it's a miracle maybe of our customer base that we have people that still think if you borrow money, you should pay it back. But it's a tough operating environment.
Right. Yes, Governor. And that, I mean, as part of our audit too, there is a reserve for uncollectible accounts or allowance for credit losses. And then that would be part of that consideration is what, there's a forecasting piece to that, a lifetime losses. So that is part of the consideration that goes in as management makes that estimate. And then we evaluate the estimate for reasonableness as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on the student loan? Okay, next.
All right, we would have the Bank of North Dakota audit report. And if I could have you turn to page number 1. So these financial statements are done under the Financial Accounting Standards Board set accounting standards. So this would be the accounting standards that you typically see with any of our community banks. So you go to a Gate City, a Cornerstone Bank. Normally what we'd see out with our for-profit banks. And then we would start with our independent auditor's report. And if you recall from previous years, since we do issue a set of financial statements under the Governmental Auditing Standards Board, because that's required as part of Bank of North Dakota being a state agency of the state of North Dakota. And the Bank of North Dakota would like to present a set of financial statements as if they're a community bank. The auditing standards do not allow us to give an unmodified opinion over the FASB or the Financial Accounting Standards Board accounting standards report. So on page 1, as you can see, if you go to the third paragraph, we've actually issued an adverse opinion on the financial statements, just strictly due to the fact that these financial statements are under the Financial Accounting Standards Board as opposed to the Government Accounting Standards Board set of accounting standards. They do allow us to sit firmly on the fence with paragraph number 2, saying that if we did not have that rule in place from the auditing standards, we would have issued an unmodified or a clean opinion over the financial statements.
And then the other item I would like to draw your attention to is on page number
Is this
2.
FASB, GASB thing just gonna be every year? I mean,
It
it's
is.
just like, is this the only institution in America that has to deal with it, or is there some, is there gonna ever, these two organizations gonna get together and resolve this?
Yeah, actually, you were the only one for the longest period of time. I want to say it was probably 6, 7 years ago that there was another organization that wanted to issue two sets of statements, one under the FASB, one under the GASB. And then as they approached their auditor, they referred to the Bank of North Dakota as their example of this is what Bank of North Dakota does. Made its way all the way up to the accounting standards or the auditing standards board at that point. And that's when the rule came into effect of there's only one unmodified, you can only have one true set of financial or of accounting statements. So you guys were, you were blazing a trail for the longest of times. So on page number 2 is the change in accounting principle, and this refers to the initial adoption of the current expected credit losses model. That changes how the bank determines their allowance for credit losses. In the previous years, it was under an incurred loss model, which the analogy would be like looking in your rearview mirror. And under the current expected credit losses model, that's a lifetime losses approach. So that'd be like looking out your front window. And that would be a forecast of the lifetime losses. So another way to think of that is if the bank stopped lending today, everything stayed static, what they would have as far as loans on their books, this is the estimate of what the future losses would be in their loan portfolio. And so this is new in 2023. So 2022's set of financial statements, which are included as comparative, are presented under the incurred loss model. And then for 2023 and then going forward would be under the current expected credit loss model. This is probably one of the most significant new accounting standards that's come through the banking world in probably 20, 25 years, honestly. So a pretty significant change in the approach of how the allowance for credit losses is being calculated.
Can we go back to on page 2 under your significant risk identified there, but on the role-based permissions related to the student loan? Middle of page 2.
I think you might be in the.
Or is it still your letter from the other one?
Yeah, I think that might be your letter from the guaranteed student loan audit.
Attachment 18?
Yeah.
Showing that as the one for the
Middle
bank.
Page 2.
That might be the GASB report.
Page you're on.
I'm on page 2.
I'm on page 2 of the.
I think we're on different page.
Oh, page 2, attachment 18, there's a 30 bullet points there that identify significant risks.
Yes. Yes, you're, Governor, I believe we would be in our management letter. And that actually is at the back of my copy. And we can sure go through those significant risks identified at this point if you'd like for us to.
Well, it's, and on the 3 of ours, it's listed as attachment 18 is under the agenda item we are. So maybe we're looking at opposite things.
Yeah. Yep. I was going through the audited financial statements and you were going through the, what's referred to as our AUC.
Were you gonna do that next?
Yes.
Okay, well, then why don't you stick with doing what you're doing and we'll come back to that, but all of us will go in reverse. We'll
Okay.
come back to that.
Yeah, no, that'll be fine. Next is just on page number 4. That's the balance sheet. Just wanted to touch on a couple of items here. Under the loans held for investment in the middle of the asset section, as far as the level of the reserve to total loans at December 31st, 2023, we had an allowance in total loans of 1.73%. And that's compared to 2022, which was an allowance of 2.02%. So actually a little bit of a decrease as we went through the adoption to the allowance for credit losses versus the incurred loss model. And then one other item I wanted to point out is down under the liabilities and equity, other liabilities, and you can see a pretty significant increase year over year. Part of that is as a part of the adoption of the new accounting standard, it does require a reserve on unfunded commitments. So essentially those available lines of credit are undrawn lines of credit on borrowing relationships. So under the new standard, it does require
the banks make an estimate of what their future potential losses would be, lifetime losses would be, and record that as part of the other liabilities. As of December 31st of 2023, that's 12,847,000 compared to zero, because it was not required in 2022 under the incurred loss model. And then next is on page number 16. And this is into the notes to the financial statement, recent accounting guidance, in which we disclose the adoption of the allowance for credit losses model versus the incurred loss model. And really, where I'd like to talk the most about is on page number 17, the table at the top of the page, the middle column, and that's the impact of the adoption of what's referred to as ASU 2016-13, which is the fancy name for the allowance for credit losses or the current expected credit losses model. As you can see, it actually had the effect of a reduction in the allowance for credit losses on loans of 17.3 million. And then, as we just talked about, under the liabilities, the allowance for credit losses on unfunded commitments, that is the initial recording of 14 million of what would be considered the lifetime losses on day one for those unfunded commitments, which then was actually a total reduction of 3.1 million. And the adoption effect of that, with that reduction of 3.1 million, is actually an increase to the bank's equity as of day one of 3.1 million related to that initial adoption. Otherwise, aside from the initial adoption of the allowance for credit losses, really the rest of the bank's financial statements are very similar to the previous year. That was, like I said, probably the most significant impact was the initial adoption of that accounting standard. So next,
and we're following these new rules, but how does the question is, I mean, for the management as well as the auditor, but how are you guys feeling about this thing? Because you
well, we're having a year under our belt. I think we're way more comfortable with it now. We knew this was coming. We tested it. The funny thing, well, I should say funny thing. The interesting thing is, if you remember, we took 3.1 million because we were technically over reserved based on CECL. That was great till the first quarter. Then the first quarter we grew and reversed it back out. So it's just a new methodology, Governor, and we're learning how to do it, and we feel comfortable. As we say, we true it up every quarter. So we project an allowance on a monthly basis, and then at the end of every quarter, we have to run the calculation to see exactly where we're at, and then we that last quarter we make that adjustment to true it up. So this would be, as Daryl would say, every quarter we would say this is based on our loan volumes and our current portfolio. If we were to stop lending today, here's our expected loss we'd have. And that's just a different way to reserve.
Yeah, and really, Governor, it's as you know, being out in industry and national conferences, I think really what the feedback is, because all the public banks, the public filer banks have adopted this in 2020. And what they've seen is that there's going to be some volatility in the level of reserves based on what's happening in the economy. I mean, because that's the biggest piece of this. The most significant change to the methodology is the forecasting piece. So as you forecast changes in the economy, that's where we're going to see some of the fluctuations that occur in the reserve, whereas the incurred loss model was much more static.
This was based on reality as opposed to based on past experience and results versus a future forecast.
Exactly, Governor.
So is this achieving its goal of trying to more fairly present risk in financial institutions, or is it because once you start forecasting, there's all kinds of gaming that can be done that could influence both up or down.
Right. Yeah, that's a great question, Governor. This was the FASB, the Financial Accounting Standard Board's response to the Great Recession, because they felt like the issues in the banking industry at that time was the fact that banks weren't recording reserves fast enough to keep up with the level of losses, and they felt that estimating a lifetime loss for your reserves was going to achieve that goal. It's still out there. I don't know. I think it's
it hasn't achieved that for, I would say, the regulatory agencies. I think they thought that there was going to be larger reserves when actually when Penn was put to paper, the reserves weren't as significant as what they were originally had anticipated. They were talking, doubling of what the current reserve levels were, not even coming close. And as you can see, actually a reduction. And that's what we saw within our client base as well. It was either flat or actually a reduction. So I would say the jury's out on whether it's actually going to achieve what they thought it was going to be.
That's diplomatic.
That's right.
They have failed to achieve.
Yeah. Right.
Which again, and then then you're in this whole thing of too big to fail, and they design the stuff, and the banks that can double their reserves and still be around just drive everybody else out of business. And my view is if you're too big to fail, then break them up now. Break them all up now, and then we don't have to worry about them disrupting the system.
Right.
They keep trying to protect the big ones. And then when they do that, they keep hurting the middle and the small. More and more of the policies backwards.
Governor, we could spend I know we would eat into all of Todd's time having that discussion. I'd love to have that discussion because I think we think along the same lines, especially on the too big to fail, because they take more risk because they know that they have a safety net of the federal government where our community banks do not. Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other questions? All right, we'll move into the communication of those charged with governance, especially, Governor, I think on your questions as far as the significant risks identified. And so part of our audit is a risk-based approach to the audit of the financial statements. As you see, we identified 3 significant risks as part of the audit of the financial statements of the Bank of North Dakota: management override of internal control. That's presumed risk in all audits. The valuation and allowance for credit losses, because that being a significant estimate, our auditing standards tell us that would be a significant risk. And then the last one is student loan accounting software, which is role-based permissions related to the student loan accounting software is not present. So essentially the people are able to do, you don't go down to the lowest level that each person would need to be able to perform their job. Essentially, there's almost I would say, you being in the tech area, this probably isn't the right, but just kind of an open port. And we have not went through and identified, okay, what's the lowest level of assignment or permission that we provide to the employees that they're able to perform their job duties.
So are you guys working on role-based permissions now?
Yes. So it's basically right now it's pretty wide open as we're going through conversion issues. Now we need to start saying these positions get this authority, these positions have less, and set that up.
Yep. Somebody's on that one.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Otherwise, the rest of this report and our audited financial statements very, very straightforward. Again, blocking and tackling, nothing. Those were the most significant items out of the current year for the financial statements. And then the last I just wanted to touch on was our GASB report. Just more so as just a FYI. So we do have our independent auditors report on page number 1. We issued an unmodified or a clean opinion on the financial statements under the government accounting standards. Then on page number 65, which is our independent auditors report on internal control over financial reporting and compliance and other matters. We had no internal control matters that were reportable, and we had no non-compliance or other matters that were required to be reported. And then the last item I had is on page 67, which are our independent auditors report on compliance with the major federal programs and the report on internal control over compliance. So we had no control deficiencies identified as part of the audit of the major federal programs. And so we issued an unmodified opinion over the compliance with the federal programs as well.
Thank you, Daryl. Please tell your team thank you also.
I will.
And how many years have you been doing the audit for BND?
Gosh, I think this was the 12th year. We had a good relationship with a couple of different presidents and CFOs, and so it's been a very healthy relationship.
Great. I'll tell your team thank you.
Yeah, we consult them a lot. They're good partners. Yep.
Great. Okay, Todd?
I'm not gonna, you've seen, this is a presentation of our annual report. I think you've all seen it. Where's Shelley? This is our grandkids. This is the kids and grandkids of some of our staff. We decided to do, we try and pick something every year. We did salute the past, address the future, and really concentrate on ag. You can see, happy to report, we had another record net income up slightly over last year of 192.7 million. Our assets stayed at about 10 billion, and then, everything really was pretty much the same. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. You guys have seen these numbers before. These are just, now that our audit is done, this will be our final, this will be what was available to the public. You can see we do talk about our disaster programs, a little bit about addressing the future, talk about our innovation over regulation, how we're continuing to try and be innovative, our collateral evaluation services, and then talk a little bit about our sustainability initiatives. And that may be another way where we can help promote this. And hey, Commissioner, I know you're heavily involved. That might be another way to put in that resiliency studies to kind of incorporate this into this whole thing, that we can show the world how we need to
How well we do it.
how we do it and how well we do it. And then your pictures are in there also. I can go into detail, but you guys can all read a report. So, and the numbers are, you've heard them several times. So unless there's any questions, there's a nice remembrance to Eric in there too. Important to the staff. So
Especially like the picture of the Attorney General.
You feel like it's big enough?
No, I knew it wouldn't be, but this is one time you have to be the same size as the two of us.
As long as my tie was straight.
It was. It's very nice.
So I'd be happy to answer any questions, but in the essence of time, I know you've seen the numbers and you'll read that at your leisure. But Janelle and her team does a nice job of putting that together. So,
Nicely done.
and we'll send that out to all the legislators, and it'll be available on our website also. So. All right, other than that, the only other thing we have is the attached minutes from our Finance and Credit Committee and Advisory Board and the non-confidential advisory board. So if there's no questions on those, we can go into closed.
I move it under the authority of North Dakota Century Code, section 6-09-35, 44-04-18.4, 44-04-19.1, and 44-04-19.2, that the Industrial Commission entered an executive session for the purposes of Bank of North Dakota confidential business.
Second.
Motion second. Take the call for the vote.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General,
Yes.
Governor,
Yes, motion carries. The commission will move into meeting in executive session regarding B&D confidential business pursuant to North Dakota Century Code 6-09-35 to consider those items listed on the agenda under B&D confidential business. Only commission members, their staff, commission staff, and B&D staff will participate in executive session. After the Bank of North Dakota executive session, the commission will meet in executive session for attorney consultation regarding those items listed on the agenda. Only commission members, their staff, commission staff, and commission attorneys will participate in that executive session. Any formal action taken by the commission will occur after it reconvenes. I remind the commission members, those present, executive session discussions must be limited to the announced purposes, which is anticipated to last approximately 45 minutes. Session will begin in 2 minutes. Is there any motions from the executive session that we'd like to consider?
Yeah, I would make a motion to approve the letter with some modifications. That would be sent back to I believe, the Minnesota Public Service
Commission
Utilities.
Yep, I'd second that.
Okay, we got a motion second. We'll call for the vote.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General,
Yes.
Governor,
Yes, motion carries. Okay, back to you, Lynn.
All right. I think you want to take up the orders? and
Yes,
cases?
please. Yep.
Okay. So we'll lump the first two together. I know you have separate motions for them, so you can do that. But the first two work together. Basically, Hess is proposing to break two 2260s into a 3840 and a 1280. And so I'll show you. There we go. And the reason that they want to do this is that they can drill them they can batch drill them from sites that they're going to construct. So if they drill them as 2560s, they would have to drill them as a single well rig move. If they break them into a 3 mile and a 1 mile lateral, they can batch drill them with other wells from that pad. Burlington Resources showed up, expressed concerns about will they actually drill the wells and what's the timing of drilling the wells. Hess presented us economics showing they both have over 100% rate of return. Those are really great wells, tier 1 geology. The wells will get drilled. Burlington asked you to impose a timing limit and require them to get drilled within 3 years. That just creates another level of uncertainty. Nobody knows what oil prices are going to be over the next 3 years, or what the administration will be after November, or what could happen. So we don't think that that's an appropriate precedent to set, and that says so in the order. What it does say is that on the 1280, the 1 mile lateral, either company could permit it and drill it, because they've got essentially neither one has a 51% majority or a 50% majority in the spacing unit. And so if Burlington wanted to, they could step in and permit that well and drill it. But the wells prevent waste and protect relative rights, and Burlington's request to impose a timing requirement isn't a good precedent for you all to set.
And you're confident with the good geology that a 1 mile lateral is still going to be economic and will happen?
Absolutely. The economics that Hess presented, over 100% rate of return, that's a really good annual return on investment. So I'm confident with this geology. Those wells that get drilled, and the fact that they're going to batch drill them, you can see the 1 mile, they want to drill 4 wells from that pad, and the 3 mile, they want to drill 6 wells from that pad. So they're going to be on the pad drilling anyway, and these wells have great economics.
So they can spread their cost across all that.
Absolutely.
Smaller footprint.
Smaller footprint, spread the cost.
And
And
it doesn't strand that one section. It's in the middle of all that.
Right.
Second.
Okay, got a motion second, and this is for.
2 motions.
Two
Yeah,
motions.
you have a motion for
26 and 27.
26 and 27.
Got a motion for those two. Call for the vote.
Commissioner?
Yes.
Attorney General?
Yes.
Governor?
Yes, motion carries.
All right, thank you. I'll discuss the next 3 at the same time. Order 33469, 470, and 471. These are confiscations of wells, as you can see, up way north in Divide County along the Canadian border. We are on the, I believe, 3rd operator for these wells. They have been left idle anywhere from 2 to 5 years. The cost to plug and reclaim the wells will run about $600,000, but we're going to recoup $50,000 in converting a bond. And we have an agreement with this company to pay us $5 a barrel from the one remaining producing well up to $225,000. The remaining $325,000, we're going to use formula grant funds from the IIJA. So essentially, no cost to the state. These surface owners and mineral owners have been struggling trying to get these wells plugged and reclaimed for as much as 5 years. And so we'll continue to pursue this company through the complaint. One of the wells doesn't have a complaint on it yet. And like I said, we'll recover most of the funds through the formula grant. So motion, 3 motions. Yeah.
3 motions. This is
Second.
all 3 for 28, 29, and 30.
Second.
Yep.
We've got a motion second. And Karen, you're comfortable with what we just moved?
I got it.
Okay, all right. Call for the vote.
Commissioner?
Yes.
Attorney General?
Yes.
Governor?
Yes.
Okay, and the final one is an abandoned disposal well. It has not disposed since 2021, so 3 years. We will confiscate a single well cash bond. And it's already been plugged. We just have to reclaim it. So there'll probably be $54,000 net, but again, we're going to use IIJA formula grant funds to cover that difference. So it's out in the Badlands. Oh, you went to it. Thank you. And it's time to get it reclaimed to get the road out of there. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We'll call for the vote.
Commissioner?
Yes.
Attorney General?
Yes.
Governor?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to take the other action items. That'd be item E and F. On the agenda.
Yes, please.
Is that the place to go?
Yep.
Okay, so item E, attachment 33, is a delegation resolution. What it will do is ensure continuity for the Department of Mineral Resources through the process of hiring my replacement. So everything that you had delegated to me that concerns the geological survey will be delegated to Ed Murphy. And, you know, he knows everything there is to know, probably more than I do, about how to keep those processes moving forward. Attachment 34 is a delegation resolution, which takes the oil and gas division delegated processes and delegates them to Mark Bohr, the assistant director. And this would be a temporary thing during the time period when you're looking for my replacement. Both of these guys, 40 years?
In my 37.
He's in his 37th year. Ed, 43? 44. I'm off by one. So we're talking 37 to 44 years experience. I'm very comfortable with this, and it will allow no interruption, basically, to everything that's going on within industry and seeing this budget through June 30th of next year.
I'll move the delegation of duties in geological survey and oil and gas division. Both.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We'll call for the vote.
Commissioner?
Yes.
Attorney General?
Yes.
Governor?
Yes. Motion carries.
Those are the action items. If you want to continue other things to next month, I just want to tell you thank you from the Wilson Basin Petroleum Conference. All of you spoke and were active participants. It was a great conference. And I even took a little ribbing from the Attorney General. That was kind of fun. And a thank you from Interstate Oil and Gas Compact Commission. They re-upped your resolution on the importance of natural gas for electric generation. So that's something that you have led the charge nationally for that. And so thank you for that. One last thing on the abandoned well plugging site restoration fund. As you know, the Attorney General's office is required to present civil cases to people that benefit from that. We have settled with 7 operators, collected 5.2 million. And we've served the other 30 operators, and we're working on 7 initial offers to come to a settlement on those. So that's going extremely well. Drew's folks are really prosecuting that. And like I said, we've already collected 5.2 million out of what was spent during the CARES Act period. So
Congratulations. Well done. Lynn, this is typically where we would give you a chance to offer closing comments for the good of the order. And we know that you're probably going to be asked to speak down the hallway too. But if there's anything specific to Industrial Commission, we would want to make sure to give you a moment to say it if it's related to this.
Well, it's bittersweet. I have loved what I've been doing for 26 years. And all of you have become friends as well as bosses. So it's been an honor to serve you and the people of North Dakota. And it's been great to build relationships with all 3 of you. And I appreciate the trust that you put in me. And I had the opportunity to grow in this role as it expanded or mushroomed over the 26 years.
Oh, Bruce, right?
The role grew and so did I. And so I want to offer mentoring to whoever you decide should take my role going forward. And you ask Governor, you know, am I going to be available to, particularly to consult on the litigation cases? And absolutely, I love this state and what you all have done, and I want to see it through.
Great, fantastic. We do have a resolution, which normally I would read, but I think I'm going to be reading it down the hall shortly, so you don't have to listen to it twice. But we would, if we have any, if nothing else to conclude, the one thing we would like to do, we got Mike here, and maybe grab a picture with the commissioners in here. I'm sure there'll be more photos down the hall, but
Can we do this?
Yeah.
The governor has
Yeah,
not
you haven't signed it yet.
And
You need.
I'd like,
Isn't it?
I would like to have it. Do we have it?
Is it felt tip? I thought it was in there. I left it in there after we, no? Good too. We'll get one. We need a sharp.
We need a Sharpie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mike.
Not a real
My
thick
bad.
one, but.
Black or blue or?
black.
Black. Yeah.
I'd like to be able to hold it.
Is there other today?
No other business,
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike. Perfect.
The only other business is getting everybody down the hall.
Okay.
After
For
a
the main
photo here,
event.
we're gonna get a. But have we concluded business? The meeting is adjourned. We'll grab a official photo here and then we'll all head down to the celebration.